for her dedication to the board. Her insights and contributions have been phenomenal over the past year, and she's going to take a step aside, but she keeps telling me, because I'm going to be back, so in a few years we'll see Shirley back again. It is now my pleasure to announce the new board for the 2020-2021 AGM season, as we're going to use sports references, so we'll go into it's our season coming up. And our board for this year acclaimed is Brad Kendall is President, Ashdown Capital, Vice President Ken Dennis of Dennis Network of Companies, Secretary Treasurer Sean Howe of MNP LLP, Past President is Jack Nicholson, Otter Co-op, Community Director City of Langley Jenny Hinch of Lucid Water Company, Community Director for North Langley Frank Buckholtz, Community Director for South Langley, Allison Killeen of CBM Lawyers. Community Director for Aldergrove, Michelle Burrows, Aldergrove Credit Union. Director at Large, Cynthia Drager, Mortgage Alliance. Director at Large, Brody McIntosh of Bromac Mechanical. Director at Large, Joanne Saunders of KPU. And to our newly elected, as of this afternoon, board members, Director at Large, Chris Dronoff of KSW Lawyers LLP. Chris Finley of Business Development Bank of Canada, and Jonathan Chesko of Ascension Benefits Incorporated. I want to thank everybody that was put their name forward and was nominated, and we really, really appreciate you coming on, and we're looking forward to working with all of you. I would like to put forward a motion now to destroy the ballots of the annual general meeting. If I could have a seconder in the chat, and then if you would mind, please voting and the poll has just popped up on your screen. The second motion that I'm going to discuss this evening the email was sent out to our members 30 days prior to the annual general meeting. Our bylaw changes are laid out as follows in the screen in front of you, so I'm not going to actually read them out because you'll all want me to go away by that time. We are providing just a couple of wording changes with the addition to the bylaws to provide us with the opportunity to, of course, operate virtual and in this space in the known future. So as soon as we can get back to in-person meetings, we will, trust me, this will not be permanent, but this just lets us operate legally with our bylaw changes made properly. Allison Killeen of CBM Lawyers has put forward the motion for the bylaw changes. Again, if a seconder would drop their name into the chat box, and then please vote accordingly. It is my pleasure to now turn over the mic to our Vice President, Ken Dennis of Dennis Network of Companies, to give you the new members report.
Thank you, Colleen. Good evening, Chamber members and guests. It's my pleasure to present the membership report this evening. The purpose of this report is to recognize new members and, of course, request your approval to accept these new applicants into the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce. Before I introduce the members that are with us this evening, I'll advise you of a couple of the applicants who are unfortunately unable to make the meeting: Theatre in the Country and the Tiny Kitten Society. And now I will announce the members who are on the call with us this evening. Andy Abro, Soccer Shots Fraser Valley; Yvonne Allen, Voice for the Horse Canada Foundation; Dawn Robertson and Garrett Robertson of Get Started Organizing; and an individual member, Ting Ting Chi. I'd like to make a motion to accept the new members as presented and call for a seconder in the chat box. Voting is now open via the poll. And now I'd like to introduce Ting Ting Chi to present the financials. Or shortly after the poll, sorry.
Go ahead, Ting Ting.
Great. Colleen, can you pull out the financial statement, please? Perfect, thank you. Hello, everyone, and this is first time I'm actually presenting the financial statement virtually. Bear with me. Colleen, can we go to the statement of operation first? Then we'll come back to the balance sheet. There are a couple of things I would like to highlight regarding the statement of earning. There are certain items are same from year to year, so you can see the fee for service has been the same in the last couple of years. Our insurance commission hasn't really increased that much. Then the other thing we want to mention is the membership fee. That's a good sign to see the increase. Even with COVID, we still see a bit more members joining the chamber. We really appreciate that. Then the other thing is program and events. The reduction in that is due to COVID because there's limited opportunity for us to host the events. With this, normally our golf tournament is in June, and in prior year, the golf tournament revenue was included in 2019, but it's not included here because we had that in, is it this month? I can't remember because I actually went to the golf tournament. Sorry, I couldn't even remember when it happened. Then going to the expenses, sorry, go back to the overall revenue. The reduction is really due to the limited events that we could host in the year. Colleen, can we go back to the statement of earnings, please? So looking at the expenses section, again, there are a couple of things. Program and events expenses, probably close to the middle of the report. It's dropped from 112,000 to 88. That corresponds to the reduction in event revenue. Our wages and benefits did increase because we did have Jacqueline came back. We actually had one full-time employee came back during the year. So that's for the reason of increase. So access for revenue over expenses, before other items, there's only one other item, which is the wage subsidy. So I would like to show you the access before the wage subsidy, which is about, I would say 40% of the year before. That's due to the reduction of revenue in events. Then we have the wage subsidy from March to the end of June of 43,000. That was collected after the year end. Okay, can we go to the balance sheet, please? Okay, great. So the cash did increase. That's from the access of revenue, mainly from the access of revenue. We do have a couple investments that's either long-term or short-term, which is the 50,000 term deposit. That's current. That's short-term. Then we also have a term deposit that matures in 2022, which is classified as a long-term of 98,000. Capital assets, the reduction in there is the amortization of our office building. Accounts payable and deferred revenue. The accounts payable is about par compared to the year before. The deferred revenue is really the membership fee that we record at accrued basis. It's reduced because even though we do see increase in membership revenue back to the statement earning, but close to the end, close to the second half of this fiscal year, we do see a bit drop in membership. I think that pretty much summarized the statement of, the financial statement of 2020. I think the next thing I need to do is, can I get a motion to accept the financials?
So the seconder will enter into the chat box. Ting Ting will get you to make the motion, and then because we're limited on how many people can content, but then the poll is up to accept the financials as presented.
That's great. Okay,
Excellent. Thank you so much.
great. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our current president and incoming president, Brad Kendall.
I was wondering if I was going to get an introduction there. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Ting Ting, for the financials. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight for the 89th annual general meeting. Hopefully, when we do our 90th next year, we can do a big celebration in person as opposed to this awkward virtual one. But thanks, everybody, for joining. It's a continued honor to serve the chamber as the president. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love the Langley community where I live, and I love being a part of the chamber. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank personally the board members that have served. Garth, Shirley, and Ting Ting, thank you so much. It's been awesome getting to know you guys. We'll miss you, and hopefully you all stay involved in the chamber and in the community in some capacity. I know from conversations with each of you that you will be. And then obviously I'd like to welcome the new board members. I've had the pleasure of meeting all three of you in the past, so welcome all three of you. I look forward to the next year at least while I'm president working with you. So congrats and welcome. So like most of the businesses, most of you with businesses attending today, the chamber was also hit with a big turn of events in March, and I'd like to thank our CEO and the staff and the team for their continued ability to adapt, make changes, and make things continue to run. I'd also like to extend my thanks for the support of all of our members, both in showing up to these events and also in sponsorship. Without the sponsorship, these events, in the golf tournament that we just ran, those types of things just don't happen. So thank you so much. One of the major changes we are making is to the Business Excellence Awards coming up. The biggest change we're making besides it going virtual is that we've changed the categories. All categories and nominations are now open. A reminder of what those categories are. One is Outstanding Support, Most Innovative, Excellence in Collaboration, Frontline Hero, Inspirational Leader, and Employer of the Year. So get your nominations in. It's all over the website. I think there's reminder emails going out as well. So get your nominations in, and then hopefully we see you all and invite your colleagues and friends and family and everybody to the virtual Excellence Awards. I think it'll still be a good event. So looking forward to it. On another note, part of the Chamber's vision is to create numerous opportunities to get involved in our business community, to learn and educate, and to make connections between people, businesses, and organizations that need each other's services. That vision has certainly been challenging over the last several months, but we will all get through this together, and we will continue to be stronger for it. The Langley business community is strong, and we will continue to work as a chamber to make it stronger together. So thank you all for the opportunity to serve, and I look forward to another fantastic year in 2021 moving forward. I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce our sponsor this evening, Natalie Lobin, Community Liaison for Trans Mountain Pipeline LP. To give Natalie the opportunity to say a few words and then ultimately introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. So welcome, Natalie. If we can get her on.
Thank you, Brad. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Lobin, and I'm the Community Liaison for the Trans Mountain Expansion Project in the Lower Mainland. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this virtual meeting. And I really enjoyed the networking and looking forward to the rest of the evening. As many of you are aware, Trans Mountain operates Canada's only pipeline system transporting petroleum products to the West Coast from Edmonton, Alberta, through Langley to our terminals in Burnaby. For more than 65 years, we have been safely providing the products we depend upon both domestically and internationally. Our Trans Mountain Expansion Project is the largest project in the pipeline's history. It will provide increased capacity to support Canadian crude oil production growth and ensure access to global energy markets. The project involved installing approximately 980 kilometers of the new pipeline, new and modified facilities, including pump stations and terminals, and a new dock complex at the Westridge Marine Terminal in Burnaby. 2020 has been a challenging year for us all. It has changed the way we live our lives, how we interact, and how we work. But thanks to the collective efforts of our workers, we continue the safe operations of our existing pipeline, as well as construction of the new pipeline. Construction is underway in Alberta and BC Interior at our pump stations along the corridor and also at our terminals in the Lower Mainland. This translates into jobs for thousands of workers and procurement opportunities for local businesses, supporting families and communities during these challenging times. To date, we have nearly 5,600 people working on the project in both Alberta and BC. In Langley, construction start is planned in the next year, and it will involve construction of approximately 20 kilometers of the new pipeline. To provide local and direct benefits to communities along the pipeline route that may be impacted by construction, Trans Mountain established a community benefits program. As part of the community benefits program, Trans Mountain and the Township of Langley have entered into a community benefits agreement that will see a $1.4 million contribution from Trans Mountain towards community amenity projects within the Township of Langley. One of the community projects identified by the Township to receive funding assistance is a proposed pedestrian and cycling overpass located on the waterfront in the historic community of Fort Langley, immediately south of the Fraser River and east of Glover Road. We are very pleased to be able to contribute to community amenity projects that would improve the Township of Langley residents' lives as well as experiences for its visitors. Through our community investment program, Trans Mountain also supported communities during COVID-19 by donating funds to local food banks in all of our communities where we touch communities, whether it be it our operations or construction, including Langley. At Trans Mountain, we're committed to providing project-related employment and business opportunities for Indigenous, local, and regional groups along the project corridor. As part of this commitment, Trans Mountain has partnered with local chambers of commerce in Langley, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack to host an interactive virtual workshop. This workshop is scheduled on September 29th and will help local businesses to learn about and prepare for potential procurement and employment opportunities to maximize local economic benefits associated with the project. This is one in the series of workshops that we have completed in all of our pipeline communities. You can register for the workshop by visiting the Langley Chamber website. Finally, on behalf of Trans Mountain, I would like to thank Colleen Clark and the Greater Langley Chamber for this opportunity to be a sponsor of the Chamber's 89th Annual General Meeting. And now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Frank Supovitz.
Hi, it's great to be with you. Thank you, Natalie, and thank you to Trans Mountain and to the Chamber. It's very exciting to be here. I don't know if you were going to say something else.
Yes,
Oh,
I was going to say something else. Thank you, Frank.
Please do.
Very exciting things I was going to say, and will do. For more than 30 years, Frank has been at the helm of some of the world's most prestigious, widely viewed, and well-attended sports and entertainment events. As the Senior Vice President of Events for the National Football League between 2005 and 2014, he was a major contributor to the meteoric growth of the Super Bowl, the NFL Draft, and American football games in London. Prior to joining the NFL, Frank led the National Hockey League's event team for 13 years, responsible for the NHL All-Star Weekend, Stanley Cup, and international competition in Europe and Japan. Together with the Edmonton Oilers, he developed the league's first stadium-based outdoor game in 2003, the forerunner to the highly successful NHL Winter Classic. Frank founded Fast Traffic in 2014, an award-winning event management, production, and consulting firm that has served a wide range of sports and entertainment clients, including the Indy 500, Major League Soccer, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Australia's National Rugby League, the Canadian Football League, the Big East Men's Basketball Tournament, the NBA's Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks, and the Houston and Minnesota Super Bowl host committees, among others. Fast Traffic was an integral member of the development and management team for the rooftop at Pier 17 at the South Street Seaport in New York City, Polestar Award winner for the Best New Concert Venue of 2018. What to Do When Things Go Wrong, Frank's newest book, was published by McGraw-Hill in May 2019 and was released as an audiobook in November 2019. Frank previously authored the Sports Events Management and Marketing Playbook, the definitive text used by sports business professional and university programs across the globe for more than a decade. Frank received an honorary doctorate in sports, events, and entertainment management from Johnson & Wales University in 2003, was honored as New York University's Cal Ramsey Distinguished Lecturer in 2014, and is currently an adjunct professor at Adelphi University. He was a recurring cast member on True TV's 2010 series, NFL Full Contact, was featured on Showtime's behind-the-scenes 60-minute sports episode on the Super Bowl blackout in 2013, and appeared in a cameo role in Ivan Reitman's 2014 film Draft Day. Wow, what an impressive list of achievements. Please Please join me in welcoming Frank Supovitz, and let's give a round of applause for Frank.
And to you, thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Trans Mountain, and to the Chamber. I'm sorry you had to sit through that entire introduction. I should probably send a shorter one in the future. I apologize for all of that. Thank you for having me. It's so great to be back in Canada virtually. I did spend 13 years working for the National Hockey League, spent an awful lot of time in the Great White North, and enjoyed all the time that I spent in Canada. One of the events that I produced while I was at the NHL was the All-Star Game in 1998 in Vancouver, just down the road from you. So if you were there or you remember it, I was the lead planner on that. The other thing that's really wonderful about talking with you tonight is I don't have to explain who Ken Dryden is. If I was in the United States, I would have to do that. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is Ken actually wrote the foreword to one of the books that you mentioned, Natalie, the Sports Event Management Marketing Playbook. And one of the things that he wrote in the foreword was that one of his greatest pet peeves is when somebody says, "Have a nice day," because to him, it's supremely insincere, right? Nobody really cares whether you have a nice day or not, he thinks. So he called me one night when he was the general manager at the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we were working together on the 2000 NHL All-Star Game and working on the planning of that. He called me one evening at my office in New York at the NHL, and he got my voicemail because I had already left for the day. And he was rather perturbed because at the end of my voicemail message, I wish people, and still do today, have a spectacular day. So to him, that was way over the top, and it started our relationship, in his words, in sort of a rocky way. Now, that's not a disaster. That's something that went wrong, but it's not a disaster. It's just a faux pas, right? We do that all the time. We do that probably once an hour. We create a situation where things are not terrible. They don't go terribly, horribly, spectacularly wrong, but they might go wrong just a little bit and it annoys somebody. Well, for 30 years, as Natalie had pointed out, I spent an awful lot of time at various sports organizations and at other organizations in places where, to be quite honest, when something went wrong, it was not a secret. And some of them were small and some of them were rather large. I'm going to talk with you now about some of those things. I'm going to share my screen with you. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. So, you know, they say that it is much more instructive when something goes wrong than when something goes right. You learn a lot. My advice to you is to learn a lot from things that go wrong for somebody else, not for something that goes wrong for you. And the first thing that went wrong for me was that I can't advance this slide. There we go. Now you can still see. Good. Well, we all run businesses or pieces of ones. We all manage projects or people that are responsible to deliver exceptional experiences to our customers, to our clients. Now, your products or services that your folks and yourself deliver might range from any number of things. My projects are live events. And as I mentioned, when something goes wrong, it's not a secret for very long. And for a quarter of a century, I pretty well cornered the North American market for screwing up. Regardless of what you do, when you work with humans and you manage anywhere from dozens to hundreds to thousands of details a day, any one of them can trip you up. Any one of them can come out of nowhere and just go south on you. The more details that you have to manage in your project, and Natalie, your project with the pipeline has got to be enormously complicated. The more details, the more complexity that you add into the system, the more probability that something somewhere at some point is going to go wrong. And the more that you innovate, the more innovation you add to something, the more untested things that get added to your project or to your business, the more risk that you're introducing into the system. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those things that have happened to me and what I've learned along the way as a result of that. And as I mentioned, if you're innovating, you're trying something new, you're introducing a lot of risk. So once upon a time, I had this really great idea. But before I get to that really great idea, did you know there's actually a Murphy behind Murphy's Law? His name was Edward A. Murphy, and he was a technician. He's actually a captain at an Air Force base, Edwards Air Force Base in the United States. And he was in charge of an experiment. The experiment was to launch a test pilot in a rocket sled and see how much sudden deceleration a person could withstand and survive. And when he looked at this contraption that had been wired by one of his technicians, he discovered that it was wired incorrectly. So he just before they pressed the launch button, he did the right thing, which was to check it again, assume nothing and double check everything. And he found that it was wired incorrectly and potentially fatally. And that's where the whole, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong slogan that is associated with Murphy first came about. Well, I really live by and have learned to live by Murphy's first corollary, which is left to themselves, things tend to go from bad to worse. So this is one of those innovative situations, perhaps. You're looking at the Montreal Forum in 1993. Montreal Forum, of course, is not there anymore, and there was nothing a whole lot innovative about the forum. But that's where the 100th Stanley Cup, the 100th birthday of the Stanley Cup was going to be celebrated at the 1993 NHL All-Star Game. And I had this idea that perhaps what we should do is put the Stanley Cup into the hands of 3 great Montreal Canadiens players whose names have been etched on the Stanley Cup. You know, probably the majority of the names that are on the Stanley Cup under the 24 Stanley Cup wins for the Montreal Canadiens, their names are on there quite a lot. Let's put the Stanley Cup in their hands, let them skate around the ice before the game begins, and let everybody celebrate these great players, and of course the 100th anniversary of the Cup. In Montreal, where the NHL was founded just 75 years before. So it's a beautiful Sunday. It's minus 25 degrees, which of course is pretty normal for February in Montreal. And I'm up in the press box waiting for the Cup to arrive. And I get a call just before, probably about 15 minutes before we go to air on television, that they can't find the Stanley Cup. It's nowhere to be found. So I knew where the Stanley Cup was before the game was to begin, and it was at a sponsored breakfast. And I have nothing against sponsors. I think sponsors are important, and I think they're enormously important. But the sponsor breakfast was something that my boss insisted that the Stanley Cup be at. And he had guaranteed me that it would make its way to the Montreal Forum well before the game was going to begin. Well, the game was not, the game was ready to begin. We're getting to 10 minutes. We're getting to 5 minutes. We have 3 great Montreal Canadiens players, Guy Lafleur, Maurice Richard, Jean Beliveau, waiting in the tunnel for the Stanley Cup in their Canadiens gear, and there's still no cup with 5 minutes to go. So I let the television producer know that we are probably going to proceed without this great moment. But I have the players wait just a little bit. Well, lo and behold, about 90 seconds before the game is about to begin, I get a call. The Stanley Cup has made it into the building. It comes out of its box. I said, get it out right away, put it in the Rockets' hands, and let him step out onto the ice. Well, I have to tell you, it's one of those moments that, regardless of what happened before and after, it really starts an event off with a bang. And the reason I mention that is, for those of you who don't remember watching the game way back then, is bang is exactly the sound the Stanley Cup makes when it gets dropped to the ice by Maurice Richard, because it's too cold for him to handle. It literally drops to the ice and bounces a few times and gets dented on national television just as we go to air, which was not really a great moment for us. Now, the fact is that it was not my boss's fault that the Stanley Cup didn't make it into the building well ahead of time. And the reason that it got dropped was because it was 25 degrees below zero. And the cup had gotten into a taxi with the cup keeper. It's actually the same cup keeper as today, Phil Pritchard. It got into a cab. It was stuck in an ice storm. It couldn't move. And Phil, very wisely, got it out of the cab, in its road box, and pushed it down the icy streets of Montreal for 6 or 7 blocks. And in the meantime, this wonderful sterling silver, priceless gem of a trophy has now been cooled to minus 25. And when the Rocket gets it into his hands, he can't hold on to it. Well, whose fault is this? This is not my boss's fault. This was my fault. This was my fault because I could have made other decisions. I get it. Lots of times when your boss makes a decision, you hope everything's going to go okay. Well, hope is not a strategy. You can't plan on hope. You've got to have a different plan. My boss felt that it was going to be possible to get the cup there in time. Once it got into the cab, he didn't care anymore. It was on its way. But for me, I could have made other decisions. I could have said, let's stage a ceremony at this sponsor breakfast to pick up the cup and have it leave the breakfast and make its way to the forum. We could have made a show out of that. I could have done it during the first intermission between the first and second period. I could have done it during the second intermission between the second and third period. I didn't do that. I left it just the way it was, counting on the fact that it was going to get there and hoping that it was. You need a contingency plan for sure, or you need a better plan A. I didn't need the contingency, I just needed a better plan A. What I learned here is there's two types of disasters. There's two types of crises. One is an oops crisis, and the other's a damn crisis. An oops is one that you cause yourself. A damn is one that happens from who knows where, right? It's something that just happens and you're going to have to deal with it. You have to imagine a plan that reduces the possibility of the oops and has the ability to handle the oops. You also have to be able to face up to what happens if something unexpected occurs. You can't hope, you've got to be prepared to deal. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a story that Natalie touched on, which was a power failure at the Super Bowl. Now, the Super Bowl, honestly, that year had a power failure going on already. The 49ers offense was totally terrible. We went through an entire half of football. We went through the halftime, which was spectacular. Beyonce was tremendous. Look, I'm not an electrician, and I got a D in physics in college, but I was about to have a problem that nobody saw coming. I'm going to show you a film clip from 60 Minutes Sports. If you don't hear it, then I hope somebody from the panel will tell me about it. But before I do that, I'll tell you about Megatruth number 2, which is you may not have broken it, but you still own the problem. Well, I didn't unplug the lights at the Super Bowl, but I still had to deal with it. So now I'm going to ask you, as I start the video, to imagine the worst day you have ever had at work. Now, if you're lucky, the only people who know about it are you and perhaps a handful of your staff, maybe a customer or two. Well, now imagine that you've got 80,000 of your customers right outside your window, waiting for you to deal with this problem. And if that's not bad enough, you have 110 million people watching on television live in the United States alone. And if that's not bad enough, imagine that you have a crew from 60 Minutes standing right next to you when you need a change of underwear.
New Orleans native Jacoby Jones returned the kickoff 108 yards, tying an NFL record, and it appeared taking any hope of a close game with him.
That changes everything for the 49ers.
At that very moment, 98 seconds into the second half, we were up in NFL control interviewing Supovitz. Suddenly, a blowout became a blackout. Half the stadium went dark.
Everybody went off and saw it. All right, we lost lights.
Doug, tell me what we do and when we do it.
What happened?
Well, lights just went out in the field.
Lights just went out on the field, I think.
All communication with NFL control had been cut off. The network was flying blind.
We're going to a manual override right now.
NFL control was also in the dark.
Okay, we got to let people know.
A sense of uncertainty filled the room.
Do we have PA? Do we have access to PA? Let's give people the PA.
Supovitz was searching for answers, and what he heard from Superdome executive Doug Thornton was anything but good.
Frank, we lost the A feed.
What does that mean?
That means that we have to do the bus tie.
What does that mean?
That means about a 20-minute delay.
I can't hear me.
2.5 minutes passed before CBS learned from an NFL official on the field that they were facing at least a 20-minute delay. Upstairs, Supovitz showed no sign of panic. Before the league asked us to turn off our cameras, it was clear that no one knew the cause of the outage.
Hey, Solomon and Steve, I know I mentioned this to you already, but try to get somebody from the league to talk to you or find out some more information, okay?
Finally, after 34 of the most surreal minutes in NFL history, the lights came on. And with league approval, so did our cameras, as Supovitz made this announcement.
All right, everybody, listen up. This is important.
we're not going to start again until I know everybody's systems are up.
So Supovitz showed no signs of panic. Well, listen, when something like that happens, adrenaline goes coursing through your body within a millisecond. You don't have a chance. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel awful. You're going to feel like your insides are about to turn inside out. What psychologists have determined is if you start to work the problem, you start to counteract the bad effects of the adrenaline that's running through your body. Showed no signs of panic. We drilled for these kinds of things, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the first thing that we had to do was figure out what the priority was. What was the first thing we had to do? The first thing we had to do was not about plugging the lights back in. It was about what to tell people. We had 80,000 people in the stadium. Half of them were in the dark. We had to be able to tell them whether they should stay where they were because we're going to get things going again and it's safe to do so. Or if it wasn't safe to do so, we had to get them out of the building if it was a real disaster. And we didn't know. So the first thing you heard me say was, what do we have the PA? Do we have the public address system? The answer to that, by the way, is most places of public assembly in North America have public address systems with a battery backup just for this purpose. You have 30 minutes of power to be able to use the public address system and tell people what's going on. In this particular case, within 3 or 4 minutes, it was determined by the Department of Homeland Security and by the police that we were not undergoing an attack, a terrorist attack, a cyber terrorist attack, that there was no fire in the building, it was safe to stay. And the very first thing we had to do was to use the public address system to tell people to remain calm. That was the most important thing to do. So priorities are not always the most obvious. You would think lights go out, get the lights back on. First thing is, why did the lights go off? What do we tell people? And that's how we handle those types of things. The other is, to remember that panic just paralyzes decision making. It'll do one of two things. People will either ignore you if you panic and you're in a leadership position, or if you are there to take instructions and you panic, people will either ignore you or they will panic too, especially if you're the leader. You can't afford that. So what we would do, our team that was in NFL control, and this is of course not at the Superdome, it's in Tampa at Raymond James Stadium, we would do what was called a tabletop exercise. It was basically an operational and logistical rehearsal, if you will. We would hire a facilitator who would become familiar with our operating plan and familiar with the stadium, and he would throw disasters at us, or if not disasters, at least challenges, logistical things that could have gotten in our way. And we as a team, about 10 days ahead of the Super Bowl, would have about 4 or 5 of those in a 4 or 5 hour period that we would have to diagnose, solve, and work together as a team. And that's what we did when the lights went off in New Orleans. We didn't panic. We went back into drill mode. We went back into the tabletop mode. So for those of you who have major projects, major campaigns, putting everybody who's in a decision-making role in one place and going through the what ifs is an enormously helpful exercise in order to make sure that you're prepared for what happens if something actually does go wrong. Now, one of the things that that I remember specifically about these tabletops is that not one of them was about an electrical power failure. But that doesn't matter, because what it really did was prepare us for anything that could go wrong, how we would approach that problem and solve it together. It wasn't about being prepared for everything, which is every detail about how you're going to respond to specific things. So We knew how and had exercises that we discussed. If a fan were to jump over the fence and throw white powder in the middle of the 50-yard line, for example, or attack a player, or some other social or civil disturbance that might have occurred outside the stadium. One of the things that I thought was a really interesting outcome from one of those exercises is I was the decision maker on the operational level. And what the facilitator did was give a disaster scenario and then said, and Frank has slumped unresponsive to the floor. So now they had to solve the problem without the decision maker in the middle of the decision-making process. And it really was remarkable because they did actually solve the problem really well. The one thing that I'm not sure I understand is that none of them called an EMT to find out what happened to me. So, which I hope was an oversight, but who knows. Now you can't drill to control your own impatience. When you have a team of people and the chips are down and things are falling apart, you have to trust them to let them do their jobs. And this is really, really hard. You have to empower your people with the and they have to understand what the expectations are. And then you have to sometimes get out of the way. Now, to me, the definition of insanity is a little bit different from the one that you've heard. And the one that you've heard is probably something like this. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. That is the one definition of insanity. A different definition of insanity is trying to set up a halftime show on a football field, a full rock show basically, in just 8 minutes.
I'm going to try to do this without stopping the clock. Clear. Go this way.
Okay, boys, I trusted you. Get rid of it.
Roger. Quick as we can, guys. Quick strike.
There was only so much time for the whole halftime. We knew the setup was going to take about 9.5 minutes. We knew how long the actual performance was, which was about 12 minutes. So that only left us 7 minutes and some change. And so, we're trying to beat that.
Here come the players.
This is where we're getting problems right now.
3:30 on the halftime clock. 3:30. Colts players emerging from the tunnel.
We gotta pick up the pace. We're going too slow.
Come on, guys.
Keep the line moving. Don't ever stop rolling.
I don't think we're going to get him out. Stage is still in the middle. They're coming out slowly.
Come on, guys.
It was a very, very tight timing.
Stage is now on the Saints side of the 50-yard line.
47, 46, 45.
Get going.
Okay.
Colts players emerging from the tunnel.
Oh gosh, we got players coming out. Let's go.
Come on, guys.
You want the players to have the exact amount of time in the locker room that they expected.
Let's take over the game, guys. Take it over.
Damn it. They're stuck. It's not looking.
I don't think we're going to get him out.
There we go.
Thank goodness we were able to get the last piece of staging off just as the clock hit 0.
Okay, go, guys. We are off the field. Look at that, right to the second.
It worked.
Because it's only your ass if it doesn't. And no one else.
Hey, I would have gone out on a high, right?
And welcome back to Sun Life Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida.
So what's really important here is what you didn't see rather than what you did see. I never talked to the stage manager down there and told him what to do. I only told him what my expectation was. This was rehearsed over and over again. I knew he knew what to do. He was down there in the thick of things. All I could do was slow him down. If he needed help, he knew where to get it, and I could get it to him. But if I was making suggestions as I was watching him do what he does, I would have slowed him down. Even if I took an extra 10 or 15 seconds out of his time, we wouldn't have hit 0 on the clock. We literally hit 0 and the game got started again just as we got that piece of stage off the field. So leading your team and letting them do their job when the seconds count, when the half seconds count, is enormously important. Another mega truth is that recovery requires a response and not a reaction. So this is a perhaps a little bit of a nuance, but you know, reacting is something that's very intuitive and it's very instinctual. You know, it's stimulus and response. In this case, a response, the way I'm using the word, is different. It's a little bit more reasoned. You took a second or two to think about it. At the end of the clip that you saw, we didn't get the game started again. You may have recognized that what I said was, hold on, we're not going to get started again until I know everybody's systems are up and running. So we knew we had a power failure. The lights had gone out. The lights had gone out and been restored to full color temperature and television was ready in 24 minutes after the lights had first gone out. But we took another 10 minutes because you may recall they said it was 34 minutes. We took another 10 minutes to go through every single system to make sure it worked because let's face it, there's an awful lot of electronics required in just about anybody's life now. But we needed to make sure the coach to quarterback system was working, that the score clock was working, that the instant replay system was working. We made sure every system that was required to conduct the Super Bowl was back up and running because since we were out for 24 minutes, what's another 10 to get this right? If there had been another score and the official had gone to look at the instant replay and there was none, the story of the game is no longer about the blackout. It's about why we got started again before there was instant replay. Another one is, in the heat of the moment, blame is not important. While you're trying to solve the problem, pointing fingers doesn't help. It's just a distraction. During the blackout itself, within minutes, the power company in New Orleans had put out a statement that said, the problem is the stadium's fault. And within 30 seconds after that, the stadium put out a statement that said, it's the power company's fault. Doesn't matter whose fault it was. We still had to get the power up and running. And when I was asked to make a comment for the media in the heat of the moment, I said, we're not dealing with that right now. We're dealing with getting the power restored. We didn't know what the problem was, and it really didn't matter. My problem was to fix it and make sure it wasn't going to happen again. Pointing fingers did not matter at all. The last one I'm gonna leave you with, or the next to the last one that I'm gonna leave you with, is the law of unintended consequences. When you make decisions, think through all the ramifications of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. What happens if things go the way you expect it, but what happens if things don't go the way you expect it? In New York, when we had the Super Bowl, we had very, very few parking spaces at MetLife Stadium that were available for motorists. We wanted to make sure that people used the mass transportation system, the trains, that deliver people from New York to the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And typically on any given Sunday, between 10 and 12,000 people use that train. Well, for the Super Bowl, everybody's coming from somewhere else. And most of them in previous years rent cars, drive to the stadium, and park there. The people who are coming from Denver and from Seattle, which were the two teams playing in that Super Bowl, were not necessarily hip to how to get around New York. Here in New York, where I live, we're used to getting on trains and on subways and on buses. Many of us don't even own cars. But the people from Seattle and Denver, we needed to make sure that they knew that the most important thing for them to do was to use the train. And we had hoped that we would get to 10 or 12,000 people using the train. We promoted the heck out of it. And on game day, 33,000 people tried to use the train that was really built for only 12,000 people. So as you can see, we had enormous crowding problems. It took 2 hours to get people out of the stadium, back on trains, back into New York in a February evening, which was, you know, clearly not optimal and not what we were thinking. We had extra parking spaces just in case not enough people took the train. We bought parking spaces in nearby lots and rented buses. What we never dreamed is that people would actually listen to us. And when we asked them to take the train, that they actually would. We could have thought about ways to make this work better if more people took the train. We could have sold tickets in advance so that, or the train could have sold tickets in advance. So we would have a sense of how many people we were going to expect. We had no idea that more than 30,000 people, almost half, were going to try to use the train. So in closing, if it hasn't happened to you, it just hasn't happened to you yet. And if it has, it's going to happen again. The longer we do what we do, the more innovation that we introduce, the more things will go wrong. It's our job to reduce the oops problems and be better prepared for the damn problems. It's just math. It's just probability. It's going to happen. I know that many of you have been dealing with crisis situations since the COVID-19 pandemic. But if we haven't, or you haven't had that happen to you, trust me, it's going to. So thank you for your attention tonight. I think, Sumner, I took about the amount of time that you wanted me to. And with apologies to Ken Dryden, have a spectacular evening.
Frank, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. We really appreciate you joining us from New York this evening. I know it's a little bit later there. Absolute pleasure. And I know that as somebody who's worked in the chamber industry and done events from every spectrum, I appreciate your guidance and some of your kind words in that, and some of your expertise I'm going to steal, because even in this virtual environment, there's just some things you can't control. And again, I always joke around that, you know, I have to have a plan A, B, C, D, and sometimes there's a 26-letter alphabet that goes with that, just in case.
100%. And you know what's really, Colleen, what's really interesting is sometimes as you start to imagine the things that can happen to you, the things that can happen to your project and go wrong, it changes plan A.
Always.
You just go back and you say, this plan doesn't work. Yeah. We have to reimagine what plan A is going to be.
So it is my great pleasure to, again, thank you, Frank, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. One of the, I've had a couple of comments throughout the evening, various text messages and emails saying this is one of the best speakers we've ever had. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so delighted. Thank you.
We do have 3 copies of Frank's book that we will go through the attendance list tomorrow, throw everybody's name in a hat. We will draw those out and contact the winners and let them know. I'm really looking forward to it. I have to admit, we bought an extra copy for our office library. So to the board members, we've got a copy around here if you need to borrow. It is my absolute pleasure to thank everybody. Natalie, again, thank you very much for coming on as one of our sponsors this year and supporting us as you have done in the past. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. And I'm going to ask one of the panelists to pop up their hand when I ask for a motion to adjourn. And they all did. Excellent. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us for our 89th annual general meeting. I really, really hope that at the 90th annual general meeting, we can cheer a glass and toast together in a room and share a meal and carry on that way. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.